Well, hello everybody. I want to do this Facebook Live. Worked at it yesterday and today I finished up the letter portion. I gave basically what would be a proposed piece of legislation for the United States of America. Now, folks, USA and tariffs, I can tell you already massive shortcomings in skilled trades in the United States. Massive. So massive, in fact, they can't retain apprenticeships for apprentices in the United States. My trade is going through that right now. If you've all missed it, Donald J. Trump presents a new expanded automotive sector throughout the United States, bringing that back by cutting down ours, Mexico's, Europe's, and many, many more. And in doing that, they've also promised all these new investors, $5 trillion with announced investing, that coal plants will go along with those new expanded and built plants. Coal power. Coal power is huge for Boilermakers. Already we're seeing a major shortage across the United States. I don't think it'll be very long before programs that were restricted under the USMCA are terminated. And now maybe we'll see some movement there. But I'm not going to get ahead of myself. It's funny. It seems that everything I get on the United States seems to always be a step maybe in that direction ahead of me, or it just surprises me, but I quickly adapt to it and go through it. So I want to do this one. It's very important. Now, we're in election cycle. I'm not starting this petition till after the election period's over. So April 28th will be the last day, and then I'll be doing this. Now, I got Jonathan Bahai, which I should have tagged him in this. I'll go back after the fact for all of you and do that. But he's built a program called Toto, blockchain letter petition referendum creation at the citizen level, something like an American concept design, although he puts the technology in it utilizing AI. And it's very impressive. I went through a presentation with himself and his friend Tom, and they gave me that on Friday. So I took that in. I created these two projects that we can get behind, and I'm going to go through it because we're in a very special place in regards to this election that hasn't happened since the 50s here in Canada. And it was with another political party that tried to fundamentally change Canada too and go forward with its narratives, and that was the Communist Party of Canada. They tried it in the 50s. They actually did get an accountant. They did go forward and try to release candidates. And Canada, the Crown threatened that chartered accountant, but turned around and they sicked the police and proceeded to beat the hell out of all those involved in the Communist Party trying to run candidates in the 50s here in Canada. Excuse me. And even they're registered today, even though they're a legal party, they're registered as allowed to continue, but illegally. They were ratified and allowed to continue the registration process, even though Canada said it's illegal in Canadian law, which should bother all Canadians, regardless of how you feel. I'm not communist. I would never want to do that. In fact, I'm looking at my country right now under the Liberal Party of Canada, the Conservative Party of Canada, who've got a whole bunch of not just communist countries, specifically through China. This was different. This was perceived through the Soviet Union, a different style of communism that China now incorporates, almost a military free enterprise, not quite the Soviet centralized system of the past during the Cold War. Now, Canada won't allow that kind of system to go. They allow these people to join their parties in the Crown political sphere. We see it from civil law socialists, every kind of outrageous republic out there is, but they're always branded under the monarchy in the class system in the constitutional monarchy known as Canada. These parties control that. In fact, a good chunk of their MP candidates are that way. Right now, breaking is the big fight over Mark Carney's new appointment to the GTA riding of Markham, which is Unionville, the American town of the GTA that was lost in the War of 1812. It was all American, Unionville, largely transformed today. Most of those American buildings are destroyed, even though they're very, very old, older than Ontario, and there's very few buildings left in Unionville. Most are now Chinese, Japanese, and all kinds of other monarchials throughout the world, or communists. But Chinese right now are the majority there in Unionville. And we've seen the Conservatives parachuted a communist Chinese candidate 2 years ago. The Liberals ran a Canadian-born Chinese. And of course, there was a big controversy because he threatened to take this foreigner back to the consulate where he's wanted by the Communist Party, apparently. I don't know how much truth there is to that. But Mark Carney turned around and replaced him with another Chinese candidate because, again, this is GTA, and if you're not Chinese and communist, you're not going to win that riding. You've heard of the Chinese police stations in Canada. Some touch overlap from that from Canada actually breached the United States, shut down quickly. The Americans arrested those persons, shut down the Chinese police stations. Well, that hasn't happened in Canada. In fact, it's the Horn of Plenty here. You can see we sold a military base in Alberta more than a decade and a half ago now to the CCP, Communist Party of China. Excuse me, we sold that to them in Alberta, sold off many institutions in Canada, mostly out west, but starting now in eastern Canada, and Canadians are acting like this is no big deal. 13 years ago, Canada signed the China-Canada FIPA deal. No Canadians wanted that. Not 87% of the population deathly against it. Today, more than 90% of Canadians support all of that and absolutely choose that over the United States of America. In fact, America, in majority of Canadians now, is the enemy. That's the number one priority for Canadians. So a lot of people saying, hey, drop the 51st state stuff. You're a traitor. All this. I was hearing that on Twitter today too. Not with Jonathan, but another space. And Canadians trying to sell that to Americans. So they say they are. But I think this is more like the Democrat Americans. Not absolutely Republican Americans. Because I know quite a few. Known them for a long time. Know who they are in the real world. So for me, it's like, I've been all over the States. Americans don't talk like that, at least not in the majority I've seen. And again, I don't hang out with Cortez-style folks. I certainly don't hang out with the Democrats affiliated with the radical policies. I've got enough of that in Canada, something I want to end. So I'm going to go through this. We're going to go through some international law that I know Canadians don't know anything about. What happened to our party as we attempted to register for the election? We had more than enough to at least do the 338, more than enough. We made every aspect of our political registration done. A great cost to myself and a lot of time of others, and a lot of good folks across Canada from every province, every territory in the more than plenty came forward, and unfortunately that was killed by a small little thing, a tiny thing that we're going to get into. We're going to show you international binding law by the United States of America and the Russian Federation today, as well as bound absolutely by the Liberal Party of Canada and the Conservative Party of Canada. You can go back to 1975 and you can find those parties cementing this into law here in Canada and promising at least the United States that Canada was going to stick with that. And you can trust Canada. They're one with you. But as I'm going to show you, that wasn't true then. It certainly wasn't. And it certainly isn't true now, all these decades later, as we just went through it. And it's going to be a challenge for all of us in the party to the United States and the Russian Federation via two ambassadors. That's going to be absolutely Pete Hoekstra, who was just confirmed 3 days ago. He assumed his office in Toronto, and I already know where Oleg Stepanov is and his office and consulate, both in Toronto. They both have the embassy attachments in Ottawa. They do bounce back and forth, and of course, both of them do reside personally in Ottawa while they're holding those offices. I'm not going to go to their houses, even though I know where they live. I know where they all live. It's a pretty funny neighborhood. But without further ado, we're going to go through this stuff as it really is, what you all need to know, and what I'm proposing to do in a petition signature drive that I would like to see 2,000 signatures. Now, I've done this before for the United Nations Security Council. This is a little different because it's a first step to get there, but also to trigger the United States Congress and to actually get this petition back to the President of the United States, as well as the President of the Russian Federation. Yes, Donald J. Trump and Vladimir Putin. I'm going to show you all how we do that. I've been waiting for this for some time. Confirmations have taken a long time. This is door number 1, finally open in this Trump administration. If you're a Canadian and you want to speak to the President of the United States, I'm going to teach you how to do that. Not only am I teach you how to do that, I'm going to punch the Liberal Party of Canada and the Conservative Party of Canada right in the belly for not only Donald J. Trump, but also Vladimir Putin. Something that these guys need to have happen. They deserve it. It's really atrocious, and it's fighting back. For Canadians who don't understand, we are dangerously close to flipping into a communist country. And if you don't think that's reality, I'm sorry to tell you, every single civil law socialist or monarchical regime that gets to this point in their evolution of empires or political systems, when the pressure starts closing in and they know that they have to give up their power, the first thing they do is run as fast as they can, 9 times out of 10, to communism. It's historically truthful, if not on full-on military dictatorship. Doesn't matter what region of the world, what level or race or creed or color. It's just a human reality from an old world system of people who are used to filling their pockets and unaccountability and can't give up their power. So these are threats that are very real right now. And now, without further ado, we're going to go through this and we'll showcase everything to you. Thank you. I know it's late, guys, too. So I'm going to blow this up, and I really want this to be understood. So I went through 2 things. I want to start here with Helsinki, the final act. And this is an anniversary piece. This isn't current. This is the OSCE. This is all about the European countries, not just them. It's like not only all of Europe, Russia's there, China and Southeast Asia, Middle East, but this is above all of that. This is absolutely all those first world kingdom empires, everything that happened in World War I and then World War II. So Helsinki, final act, everybody, to understand how important this is. At this time, the United States and the former Soviet Union, Russian Federation today, had completed major works as the United Nations Security Council highest authorities, most powerful countries in the world, made a commitment here in Helsinki It was proposed in the 50s by Russia, but USA and Russia didn't just have the Cold War, which you saw a space race, you saw all these races. Well, you know what's really funny about this and the beautiful thing about the former Soviet Union and the United States is little does anyone realize they also had a race on civil rights and human rights achievements to be these superpower good countries that were going to destroy the world of evil. Believe it or not, it's never talked about. Of course, European colonial powers, imperial powers would never want to talk about this race between the United States and Russia. And what had happened is it was during the JFK and everything else, and then into one Richard Nixon, where they finished off all the monumental civil, economic, and political rights for not only Americans in the United States, all of them. American Indians were made whole. Russia was doing all this too. And then they came up with this, that they both ratified. And of course, everybody, of course, they ratified this, but UK refused to. They said, nah, no way. They wouldn't bind it into law. They reserved their veto. France as well, too. And of course, China just wasn't on board because they're not a part of this. China went through a civil war during World War II, and of course, communism won out. Now, they were attacked by the Japanese, but the civil war that was going on during World War II for China, everybody, was much, much larger than the entirety of World War II for everybody else. I know that's not a well-known fact, and they came out of it, of course, in 49 after World War II on their own. 51 and then 52 they were done, but it took a lot, and that's where you get into Taiwan. The former regime ended up in Taiwan, pretty much thrown out of China, right? And the communists took over. So that was the history of China, and why it's important on Helsinki is Helsinki was all about reducing trade barriers, installing political, civil, and economic rights that Russia and USA in 1975 were proud, just like the space race and everything else, that, we have the most human, civil, and political rights implemented in our countries, and now we're going to force it on the rest of the world. And of course, your government, Canada, said, yes, us too. So it's not just out of World War II, this being made international law in Europe, now Canada, USA, and Russia. But yeah, Canada. And we have the results of this from Canada, where you find that the Liberal Party of Canada and the Conservative Party of Canada signed. They signed, and there's some important pieces here that we're going to get to in a minute and why this is critical. So I just want to go over this again. This is the top half of the world. So everything in green means bound and ratified. So see that? You have Canada, of course, Greenland, right? Everything Trump's going through now. There's the United States of America. Jump over Europe, right? All of it. Russia, all the way down. All that's missing is basically all the southern countries. Now, Australia didn't go with it because UK didn't. Like, they signed, but they did not ratify, they gave a verbal agreement, but they didn't sign on officially. And UK left that, but not Canada. Canada was, no, we're great, we're human, we're going to follow all of your laws, right? And so the important part of the Helsinki Accord is called Article 103, that the United States and Russia put in as an absolute of Helsinki. And I'm going to read it to you. So Article 103 of the Charter says this: in the event of a conflict between the obligations of the members of the United Nations under the present Charter, I mean Charter of the UN, and their obligations under any other international agreement, their obligations under the present charter shall prevail, right? So the charter and this Helsinki agreement give absolutely credence to political and civil rights. And that's what this is really about in Canada's breach. And we're going to get into political rights, your rights to pursue things, right? So I'm just going to give you this. The impact of Helsinki was the principles outlined in basket 3. That was the third. They said a basket of human rights, civil and political rights, played a crucial role in fostering democratic opposition movements in the communist bloc, eventually contributing to the collapse of communism in Eastern Europe and the reunification of Germany. The Helsinki Accords, and particularly Basket 3, demonstrated the power of human rights to challenge oppressive regimes and promote a more democratic world. This is all about the Declaration of Human Rights, the Convention of Cultural and Political Rights that the Soviet Union and the United States bound. And of course, like I said, you can see which countries did not, most of the world, but Canada agreed, apparently, but we know that that was a lie. So I just want to go over this. The Helsinki Accords, signed in 1975, were a landmark agreement that included provisions for respecting human rights and fundamental freedoms, which had a significant impact on the political rights of individuals in Eastern Europe. Specifically, the Accords emphasized the right of freedom of thought, conscience, religion, and belief, as well as the freedom of expression, movement, and family unification. These provisions provided a basis for the dissident movements in Eastern Europe to challenge their governments and advocate for greater political freedoms, right? You know, making a political party, moving away from communists to a we the people republic, or ending a monarchy and moving to a we the people republic. Because this happened, folks. This happened for many, many states out of this, okay? And it's backed up by the UN Charter. The mandate of never again, meaning no more colonial wars 1 and 2. This was the basis of USA and Russia going forward, okay? And it's very important, just so every Canadian, I'm pretty sure you already all know, when you read your charter in Canada, you don't have any political rights. You know that. I hope you all do, right? When we look at this list, right, you don't get any political rights. There is no right to having your own political freedom in Canada. That's not in the charter, and that's, of course, not an accident because we're a constitutional monarchy. You're subjects and savages, because if we had political rights and freedoms, like the charter listing that, we would be able to stop all the inhumane treatment in Canada, but we can't, and I'm going to get to it in a minute. So Helsinki gave that for a lot of the world. Canada signed on. So Canada told them, because you read it, that we are going to give political rights. But as you know, this was in 1975. Trudeau Sr. promised it in the Helsinki Accords. He told them all, yes, we'll do it. And even the Conservatives backed him up and said, yes, we'll do it, USA. Yes, Soviet Union, we will do this. But guess what happened, as you all know? 1982 amendment came, and nowhere in your Charter of Rights and Freedoms do you have any political rights, none whatsoever. It's never, ever been mentioned in Canada because you're subjects, or worse, you're savages. There's only a certain set of individuals in this country that are allowed political rights, and that certainly isn't any of us, as we just found out. So, 1975 Helsinki Accords, formerly known as the Conference on Security and cooperation in Europe's final act, affirmed the principle of sovereign equality and self-determination of peoples. Sovereign equality and self-determination of peoples. Basket 3, this is also part of the UN Charter. It's also what was forced upon Sir Winston Churchill by King George VI, who agreed to this in the First Atlantic Charter with the United States in 1941, as well as the Yalta Conference in 1942 with the Soviet Union. So it said, emphasizing the inviolability of frontiers and the territorial integrity of states, right? So we went through this. I presented Canada, the 51st state. Donald J. Trump did too, President of the United States. They have this in the Republican records, right? It's part of Republican presidents' mandates. So this was done, all designed by Nixon, but it was Ford who took over because Nixon was shot down after being impeached. Ford finished it, though. He finished it, and it remained in place ever since and hasn't been removed by any president. So it's here now. This is the same for Russia. It's never been removed by the Russian Federation. So Vladimir Putin and Donald J. Trump understand this, right? This delicate balance aimed to address both security concerns and the need for respect for human rights, particularly in the context of the Cold War divide, aka communism, which is now huge and present in Canada. So we respond to that for this election, right? Here's the problem. So we went through with Canada, the 51st state. We follow international law. I gave everybody the legal path forward. And for all intents and purposes, Canada has the United States, Donald J. Trump, and the Russian Federation, Vladimir Putin, fooled into thinking that Canada is this great place, because when you look at stuff, it looks good on the surface. But I'm going to give you this point that we incurred absolutely to register for the 338 in this election. We had all the people, we had every one of our check marks done, except for this one. It's called appoint an auditor. The auditor produces reports where they declare whether the party's returns fairly represent the information in its financial records. Only a provincially accredited accountant or firm of provincially accredited accountants, CPA designation, can fill this role. Please contact CPA Canada to obtain a list of eligible auditors. And we did. You can find a complete description of this role in the reference tables and timelines. I spent over a year and a half leading up to this to get to that. And unfortunately, folks, there's a problem with what's called a chartered designation. And then they go on to say accountant, and it's and or. It says or there, but it's and firm, because I have the full documents. Not only do they need to be a chartered accountant, right? That means chartered means they swore an affirmation to the Crown to get that accounting designation. That's where they get a charter. And from there, they take their designation and they use that to build a firm, right? Which is a corporation, but it's a very specific kind of corporation that relies on that charter designation. You've heard of this before. A law firm by a bar lawyer, or a medical doctor with a medical practice. They all fall in the same thing, that those companies can only register with your accredited designation, and that means you swore an oath to the Crown. So when you go to these people to register your party, even though you've done everything Canada said you could. Canada put this specific little piece in there that most people fly through, that, oh, but you're fundamentally trying to change Canada. That's against the oath of the CPA or CA, because it's not just CPA. You could be any a chartered accountant, chartered practicing accountant, or chartered managerial accountant. But they still need to have a provincially registered firm to be able to do that. And we did find people, but they weren't able to complete this when they started going through it. They realized when they talked to their friends on this list, they go, hey, yeah, this party, but, oh, wait a second, they tell them. They say, you know that oath you swore to get, that chartered, and then you got your document, just like lawyers in Canada. This isn't American or many other countries in the world. This is Canada. And it's an affirmation oath that what you did schooling, you finished it, but now it's time to get your diploma designation. They tell you, oh, before we can do that, there's just a small matter of this oath of affirmation allegiance. You have to swear to the crown. You know, it's largely symbolic. It's not really major, but, you know, we can take your designation away from you and in turn have the provincial crown remove your firm's registration, meaning you lose your whole business because you broke your oath. I went through this many, many times. I thought I had one jury, but they were all up for it. But when push came to shove and they had to address this portion with, again, that please contact CPA Canada, when they went and did that, they all came back frayed. I can't help you. They all had bad excuses why they weren't able to register us, which didn't make sense to me. And I'm actually a managerial accountant. I didn't go for a CPA, but I'm a business graduate with a major in economics. I took managerial accounting and accounting 1 and 2. I could do another year and then swear this oath and get this, but you know what I mean? It's basically, if you try to fundamentally change Canada, meaning we the people republic, we're going to pull your designation. So that right there is a breach of Helsinki and absolutely the UN Charter. I know for a fact that the United States of America doesn't know anything about this. Donald J. Trump doesn't know anything about it. And I guarantee you as well, too, the Russian Federation doesn't know anything about this. Now, remember, everybody, 1982 came as an amendment. The Charter of Rights and Freedoms bragged about worldwide, but where in the Charter, any of you, and I know Canadians love their Charter, I've seen you all wave it at so many rallies, even though I laugh because I say, well, the crown can giveth and taketh away. But even still, in that Charter, at what point did they implement any of that from the allies of Helsinki that Canada signed on more than 7 years before, promising the allies of World War II that they would match USA and Russia and what they imposed across the world for never again, meaning this is choosing to be an ally of World War II. And right here we know, and we also know by our charter, that clearly Canada didn't implement that in their charter in their next amendment procedure. And they certainly, right here on Elections Canada, crucify specific political interests that don't align with the constitutional monarchy. So it's a lie, and we got it right here. Nobody can deny that. It's a breach of the UN Charter, 1945, and it's also a breach of USA and Russia's binding international laws that Canada said they've signed on to, and yep, we did it, but they certainly didn't do it because they cut us out of this election on Canada, the 51st state. We're not allowed to do it, and in their rules, they make sure we can't get past this simple should-be task because we are fundamentally changing the constitutional monarchy. Our political rights don't matter. We don't have any in Canada. We only have political rights if we're part of the political establishment they designate, right? See the problem here, everybody? So here's what I was getting at. In Canada, oaths and affirmations are formal statements taken under legal obligation, either religious or non-religious, that a person promises to fulfill a duty or responsibility faithfully for specific designations like appointments to public offices, members of parliament, or certain professional bodies. And this is all your firms: accounting firm, law firm, medical practice. There's a number of them. Oaths or affirmation are a standard procedure. They serve as a pledge of loyalty, commitment, and adherence to specific laws, regulations, or ethical code. Well, I can tell all of you exactly what happens to professional bodies. They are oaths. They're for a pledge of loyalty, and they adhere to specific laws under the Crown, and specifically that they must follow on that constitutional monarchy or that constitutional monarchy. It even says in the oath to the Constitutional Acts of Canada, which when you read the Constitutional Acts of Canada, for the betterment of the British Empire and Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, but it also goes to King Charles III because it's all heirs. And when they open up legislation, every time they do going forward since her passing, every time the government opens it up, they will change it. Just like the next amendment made to the Constitutional Acts of Canada, whatever small amendment that is, it won't matter because you will see the document updated and changed to King Charles III. Now, does that even matter? No, because 1982, that was the end of it. From 31 to 52, and then 1982, we saw the complete transformation. Right now, that makes Governor General of Canada and Lieutenant Governors. They go to the UK, and sure, there's international narrative from King Charles III right now, but it's really Prime Minister running without, and I repeat, without the only one check and balance we ever had was Crown against Canadian politician, the elected versus the appointed. But now the elected are in charge of the appointed. And in Canada, under our Constitution, no Canadians have any checks and balances, none whatsoever. And you have zero, I repeat, zero rights to any political rights whatsoever. Right there in Canada, this is the key right here that you'll find in AI, and you can see where they don't want to get into too much detail of it, but any of you can go online and find out exactly what those oaths are, or contact a school and you'll find out that in order to get their designations, they have to swear the oath. This isn't every profession in Canada, but it's the major ones. The major ones attached to Lord of the Treasury, national security, defense, all of those Privy Council roles, the major ones that are found in Lord Spiritual or Lord Temporal, based off the House of Lords UK, and all the lordships made in the United Kingdom system in their uncodified constitution. Canada codified goes through a lot of it. A lot of it they don't. They say it's largely unwritten on these ceremonial or basically monarchical roles, but they are actually written, and you can actually find the documents, it's just called multi-textual. But this is the truth of Canada, and this is something that Americans and Russians don't know, which are both we the people republics, and this is a serious law that the United States and USA ratified, and they believe that this political freedom does exist in Canada. At least they thought so. I know that both Russia and USA were confused in COVID, and we've seen both Vladimir Putin make statements on Canada over the trucker convoy, and again, we saw Donald J. Trump make major rally statements over what happened to the Canadian truckers and said, this is ridiculous, right? And then you realize that people in Canada don't have freedom of expression unless the Crown says they does. Canadians don't have political rights or rights to change political reality. And what I mean by that is moving away from a constitutional monarchy. You're trapped. And even in this, clearly, as I've showed you all, it's not possible to register a We the People Republic political party in Canada. And this is why USA and Russia need to know, and why we were not able to do Canada the 51st state. It's not because we're traitors, like people are trying to say. It's because the Crown system's criminal and they're in breach of international law. Yeah, so in Canada, to practice a regulated profession or trade and use a reserved title, like chartered, right? Individuals need to obtain a license or certificate of qualification from the relevant provincial or territorial licensing body. The specific requirements for licensure vary by profession and province, so individuals should consult the licensing authority in the specific province or territory where they wish to practice. And that's when you find out, to get your designation, you're going to have to swear the oath.
Canada, the 51st state. TrumpsI1.com. National Petition of the Canadian. Subjects of the UN state, Canada. Email, daveyorkman@trumpsI1.com. April 28, 2025. Ambassador Pete Hoekstra. The U.S. Consulate General. Toronto, Canada. 360 University Avenue. Toronto, Ontario, M5G1S4. Ambassador Oleg Stepanov. The Russian Federation Consulate General. Toronto, Canada. 60 St. Clair Avenue, E5th floor. Toronto, Ontario, M141N5. Hello, Ambassadors Pete Hoekstra and Oleg Stepanov. We the people of Canada come to you both with this blockchain petition letter addressing our dissenting views shared by both the Russian Federation and the United States of America on Canada's breaches and violations of the 1975 Helsinki Final Act and Article 103 of the UN Charter. We the people of Canada, recognizing that the United States of America and the Russian Federation have enshrined legally binding international laws to the never-again mandate of the allies of World War II, bring to your attention that Canada's regime governments under the Liberal Party of Canada and the Conservative Party of Canada did knowingly violate the Helsinki Final Act 1975 by restricting the PCC, Party of the Canadian Constitutionalists, from binding international law on human, civil and political rights in the Canadian federal election 2025. Under the Constitutional Acts of Canada 1867 to 1982 consolidated did require that to register a political party in the 2025 Canadian election that an accountant must be chartered under federal Crown customary law as well as licensed in a province under provincial Crown customary law. In doing so, any attempt by a Crown sworn accountant to register a Republican, with a people system, would result in breach of their Crown sworn oath of allegiance and result in the termination of their accountant designation. Under the Limited Federalism and the Constitutional Acts of Canada 1867 to 1982 did also add the loss of provincial corporate registration via loss of a license for the accounting firm. We the people of Canada submit these letters of petition to you both as clear and present violations in full of the binding international laws of the UN Charter Article 103, as well as the Helsinki Final Act 1975 that Canada's Liberal Party of Canada and the Conservative Party of Canada signed and ratified. We the people of Canada ask you both to submit these petition letters to Presidents Donald J. Trump and Vladimir Putin to proceed to the United Nations Security Council for the next phase of decolonization. We the people of Canada request that you also take this education and truth forward in your negotiations regarding the relevance of the Russian-Ukraine military operation and attempts by bad actors such as the Liberal Party of Canada and the Conservative Party of Canada to weaken both the United States of America and the Russian Federation on the world stage. We the people of Canada recognize the United States of America and the Russian Federation for their significant contributions to international law since World War II and are not ignorant of the great works you have both completed for the entire world. Enclosed is an American proposal for Canada, the 51st state members' path forward in compliance with your shared binding international laws. We, the people of Canada, are asking for the glorious allies of World War II to bring us forward in your image and vision as laid out since 1945. Please take all of these letters as we push towards 2000 in petition. Sincerely, Dave Bjorkman, PCC, Party of the Canadian, CONSTITUTIONALISTS, Elections Canada form and registration attached. Harlan County, Alberta, Canada.
Okay, before I hit the next one, everybody, I'm going to turn on the light here for a sec. So that's the opening letter, giving it to them, and so they can reference the laws, which they already know all the resolutions. They have them up right away. I'm going to put this letter in Russian. So what do I mean by blockchain? So my friend Jonathan has a program, he calls it Todo, and I did that. And what can happen is I can go on there, make an account, upload this letter, upload it in English. I want to do English, Russian, maybe 7 letters. It's 3 something to have his AI do it for me. Find the people I want it mailed to in North America, which is very easy. Oleg and Pete are going to be there, as well as if I even wanted, we could do the Congress, right? But each person you mail to costs $3 and something cents, right? So what I would do is upload this in English and Russian. So I'd pay $7 with this account I opened. It's free, but I get it all set up, send it there, and I start a stream where all you guys come. You create your little account. You click on the letter, say, yeah, me too. I want to send this, and it will send it to them and mail it out, do all of that for you, like real mail. They'll get it with your name on it, your stuff, right? That, hey, my name is blah, blah, blah. And it's basically everybody that I want doing this is those who registered with Elections Canada forums, because here's the proposal I'm giving in political rights. And since Canada's being so awful, and we know they're not going to do an amendment, but this what this letter's for, everybody, is to throw Canada out of Helsinki, to put them as an orange, like quit being a liar, tell everybody who you really are, that Canadians do not have political rights because it's not in the Charter, which is 1982. So Canada signed on to that Helsinki in 75, promising that Canadians had real political rights, but by 1982 that wasn't there. Didn't matter what negotiation. They lied. They lied to Russia and USA, and they've been lying since 1975. Like, folks, that's 50 years ago already. Canada's been living a lie for 50 straight years, and it's not the only lie, but this is a real punch in the belly from us to the Liberals and Conservatives, what they did to us, right? And that's all of you too. And I know a lot of you want the 51st state, you want American citizenship. Well, that's really what this is for. So now I'm going to give you a proposal that's going to go to both of them so that Vladimir Putin's seeing what we're doing, and also Donald J. Trump's going to see what we're doing, because they're both going to get it. If I can get enough signatures, and I think I will when we start really hammering this. And of course, there'll be regular snail mail too for those who aren't for the technology. You can print off both of this letter, 3 pages, and you can print off what's coming up next, the presentation for a proposal. And you can print that off, and then you could mail that yourself too. And I can set that up for those who like the old school, where you sign your own letter and all that. You can do that too, because that's how it's going to be a petition. But the beautiful thing here is getting 1,000, 2,000 letters to both Oleg and Pete Hoekstra. Can you imagine Pete's office where, another 10 letters in the mail, oh boy, all in the 51st state, and what happened in Canada. What's going on, Pete? What's going on, Pete, right? And same with Oleg, and they're going to be going, oh, geez, we better send this to the president, right? So here's the next one.
People go. Exodus 5, verse 1. The Canadian and United States North American Helsinki Final Act for Canadians who legally pursue Canada, the 51st state. Kasnafa. Introduction. Canadian North Americans who registered with 2025 Elections Canada Party registration forms for Canada, the 51st state, and can demonstrate a minimum 75% passing grade in an American constitutional knowledge test, American civics and naturalization test will be able to freely enter, live, and work in the United States through a granting of a visa or green card. This act, signed in 2025, acknowledges the pre-existing rights of the Canadian, would be made American peoples to cross the U.S.-Canada border freely. Article 1. Canadians who seek to make Canada the 51st state through Elections Canada Party Registration Membership Forms, but were denied Article 103 of the United Nations Charter in breach of the Helsinki 1975 Final Act by the Canadian federal and provincial governments, qualify under this Act of the Congress of the United States, passed by Senate and ratified by the President of the United States. Article 2. It is understood Canadians whom apply for the Exodus 5 verse 1, known as CUSNIFA, Canada-USA North American Helsinki Final Act, will require birth certificates, passports, and all relevant documentation for visa path registration in the United States. Article 3. Basket 3 and Canadians whom naturalized through the Exodus 5 verse 1 pathway will establish the Helsinki Canada-USA Human Rights Group Civil Society and dedicate their lives to seeing Canada reach the following 3 human rights and fundamental freedoms doctrines. Family reunification, freedom of movement and trade, aimed at dissolving the international boundary separating Canada and the USA via Canada, the 51st state. Allowing for citizen lead groups to teach civics to the Canadians trapped under the electoral autocracy of the constitutional monarchy. Ending monopoly of force, monopoly of crowd, and monopoly of finance by education and citizen lead initiatives. Promoting cultural and educational exchanges between Americans and Canadians on the dangers of socialism and fascism inside constitutional monarchies, and the use of Lord's temporal and Lord's spiritual to corrupt the word God and its American legal significance. Impact on human rights are important for the dissidents of the Canadian constitutional monarchy yet to come. Advocacy and monitoring programs must continue on an ongoing basis by the Canadian dissidents who pursue American citizenship in order to highlight the non-compliant monarchical regimes in Canada who will continue in gross human rights, violations not readily seen by born Americans in a functioning democratic society.
So see, that's a proposal, and I'll be putting that in Russian too. So Russia sees what we're proposing to the United States and what they can do. And who knows, maybe Russia will throw something at us too, right? But USA and Russia are both going to get a kick out of this. And you know what? It's relevant to Russia and Ukraine right now. And this is where I think we could actually see some major success. I really do. Because everything listed here in these articles comes right out of what was imposed on Europe. Like, folks, monopoly of force, right? You're supposed to be able to defend yourself and your family and your property. But in Canada, since our inception, no, that's a power of the crown. We've never had an amendment to that. Never. Even though everything that's America and Russia, that's true for them. Not for us. Like that right there, right? Monopoly of finance. They run their crown chartered banks. We're not allowed to have inflation setting financial where the burden's on the lender, not us. We eat it all the time as subjects. We don't have economic rights, not the rights that Americans and Russians both have. Those aren't enshrined here either, right? Monopoly of the crown over all these businesses, corporations, the land. It goes on and on and on. We know all the trade barriers are there interprovincially and much, much more. We know they change their rights and rules whenever they want. They keep most of the land for themselves in an old world style system. These things were put to an end in Europe in 1975, folks. This is all out of Helsinki. This is the promise from the UN Charter, 1945. Finished by 1975. Hello, Canada. Hello. you know? And then this is the problem. People wonder why I champion the 51st state. And it's not that I don't champion Russia as well, too, or other countries in the world. It's just we're largely Anglophone here in Canada. Ultimately, USA is our very right neighbor, right on our border, right on our heels. There's no Arctic massive tundra to cross, right? Like it is for Russia. We're right there with USA. That is our number one match. And if you want all these rights that so many places have in the world that clearly Canada has not enshrined, they had their chance in 1982. Nothing of this. That's most of Europe and even absolutely the Soviet Union, now Russian Federation today, and the United States of America doesn't belong to any Canadian. I just went through it. I listed it all for you. I listed how that in this attempt to get Donald Trump to agree to it, that we, the people who were granted citizenship, would work forevermore in a civil society if we became American, to teach this to Canadians from the outside if we were to get a visa path, that from that, right, we would change things. We would keep that alive forevermore and try to change Canada from the outside. Now, for folks asking me, yes, all your pensions are transferable in the United States. It's not dollar for dollar. You get your value changed into USD. You don't get dollar for dollar, meaning if it's 70 cents on the dollar like right now, that's what you get. But they match it. Whatever you put in is credited in USA if you became a citizen. That's always been there, by the way. USA does that. Canada agreed to that. Healthcare, you only get healthcare when you're in Canada. So if you need something critical, you got to go back to Canada for it, because you will have to pay in the United States if you're not over the age of 65. So maybe certain retirees as a citizen, it might be beneficial for you. Most other folks, it may not, right? You change yourself. But this is that step. And it's also to get position in the United States, as I clearly go there, that we will educate Canadians on everything you've all just learned. That since Helsinki, all those countries in the picture in green have all implemented all these things. This freedom of trade. Look at European Union. You all know this to be true. They have freedom of movement. They don't have any trade barriers amongst each other. USA's always been that way anyway. Russia's always been that way. But where is Canada, who signed Helsinki, signed the UN Charter that overrides, but yet Canada didn't want to go on with the Allies? They want to be what? Access? Because that's the truth here. We're missing a ton of our rights. Now, some of these rights could be done by a province in provincial constitutionalism, but in our federalism, which is what we are, how do those transfer between provinces, even if we could get it? But I know the provinces don't even want to do that. I know because I presented that just a few years ago, and every single premier either ignored me completely or threw it in the garbage. So if you think for a second any provincial premier today gives two shits about any of us, you're sadly and sorely mistaken. You're a sucker born yesterday. Remember, this is all bound and ratified for those green countries, supposedly all first world, except for fucking Canada. Look how many you're missing. Read these documents a few times. Listen to them if you want. I did put up the documents, but come April 8th, I'm starting this. Those who want to see real change, do it. It's going to be $7. I shouldn't say, maybe, no, I'd say probably $15 out of your pocket, out of your life, all on mailing. Jonathan's not charging anything. By law, I can't, because I took those registrations. I can't ask for donations. Maybe folks with money, as we get rolling on this, if people need money for postage, maybe Jonathan could set that up. I'll have to ask. I'm not promising nothing, but maybe we will. But I can't do that for us, for Elections Canada. I can't. Or then they got me, and then they can turn around and arrest me, and then they'll turn around and say, oh, he's a criminal. He's talking about all these rights, but yet he committed a crime, right? So I got to be really clean here. But there's a will, there's a way, and we'll look at that. But this is a real path forward. This is something we can do to go around the government of Canada, to have the government of Canada held to account. At least the Liberals and Conservatives who are in the role of the Prime Minister, party in power, or absolutely the official opposition. Either way, those two were in charge of signing this. They agreed to all of these rights. And in 1982, they didn't see it done, and nobody's proposed any amendments. So, folks, think about that. 50 years. We're in the anniversary of 50 years, and we're the only one of the supposed allies who hasn't ratified any of this, and no one's been made aware of it. You're left to look like an idiot. And your charter doesn't have any of these things in it. All the things they promised 7 years before the charter. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. And you all know Pierre Elliott Trudeau went on to do the charter amendment of 1982, tricking the Allies and the Russians again. Oh, look how great we are. They even bragged about how their charter's the best in the world. But yet look how many I highlighted from Basket 3 that Canada has never implemented. Never once. That's my video. Get ready, folks. This is going to be the petition. If you want to see real change, you want a real style referendum imposed on the Crown, this is how you do it. Because Russia and USA, they can make it happen. And they have 84 other countries in the world. And how did they do it? By active citizen groups like ours, constantly hitting, constantly fighting, at every single opportunity and angle that presents itself. God bless. That's my video. Share, share, share. Get it out there. Bye now.